Begin our journey, which will have to, God willing, will continue. The basic question: why did the Chachamim, why did the sages enact that we drink 4 cups of wine? If you have it there, the paper's there. Yeah, no, not that one. It looks like this. Why did the sages enact 4 cups of wine? So there are many answers, but the most basic answer is brought down in Talmud Yerushalmi. The Torah doesn't say 4 cups of wine. Obviously, the Torah, what is mandated in the Torah on Pesach night in terms of consumption? It's matzah. The Beis Hamikdash stood, of course, Korban Pesach and the bitter herbs. Now, bitter herbs, modern is midrabanan, and the Korban Pesach we just symbolize with a piece of matzah. But the Torah makes no mention of wine. The whole making kiddush is an enactment of the very early Chachamim, was way back, to make kiddush and declare the sanctity of the day over a cup of wine. It's hinted to in the psukim, wine associated with simcha and with holiness. But why 4 cups of wine? So the classic answer is the top of your page, because the Chachamim wanted that we should remember, be the forefront of our minds, on Seder night, the Daled L'shonis of Gula, the 4 expressions of redemption found in Parshas Va'era. They're underlined on the page in front of you. You can see there, Vaytzeisi, I will take you out. V'tzalti Moishe, Hashem tells Moishe, tell the Yidden, I will take them out. V'tzalti, I will save you. V'galti, I will redeem you. V'lakachti, I will take you. So for these 4 expressions, the Chachamim wanted us to remember them, and therefore they enacted 4 cups of wine. So a number of questions. Number one, there are many expressions of redemption in the whole story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Why are these 4 so important? It's saying the same thing. 4 cups of wine for it. But that's not the main question. The main question is like this. The Mordechai. The Mordechai is a famous, very early codifier whose commentary is printed in the back of every standard Gemara. He asks on the Yerushalmi, if that's the reason, you're going to see he differs, doesn't understand. If the reason that the Chachamim enacted the 4 cups of wine was to remember these 4 expressions, then there's no justification to make 4 cups of wine. What should they have done? They should have said, have 4 matzahs. Let's understand this question. His question is, in Torah, everything is precise to the nth degree. As you all know, if something can be achieved in 1 step, you don't use 2. If Torah can say and convey a message with 1 word, it doesn't use 2 words. If that message could be conveyed in a letter, what even say a word? And if the message can be said just in because 1 passage follows the other, not even a letter. So what justified the Chachamim to come out with a whole new takon, a whole new enactment? Again, have 4 cups of wine. If the whole intention is to remember the 4 lashonos, take what exists, dairaisa. The Torah says eat matzah. What does the Torah say? That each person has to eat enough matzah to satisfy, which is a kazayas. Then why do we have 3 matzahs? Why do we have 3 matzahs? That's not in the Torah. Why do you have 3 matzahs? The reason we have 3 matzahs is because the Chachamim were already mesaken that every Yom Tov meal you have 2 breads. Why? That's in order to remember the manna which fell in the desert, a double portion before every Shabbos and every Yom Tov for the 40 years in the desert. So they want us to remember that. So you need to have 2 matzahs. So why 3? Because since early on, before we eat the matzah, we actually break 1. Why do we break 1? Because a poor man always, it's lechem oini, puts away for later. Therefore, you got to start with 3. That's the basic reason why we have 3 matzahs. So that you end up with 2 whole ones when you make a bracha. Good. So now, if you Chachamim, now you want us also to remember the Daled of the Shoiners? 4 matzahs. Mission accomplished. Where did the Chachamim get the gushpanka, which means the source, the right, as it were, to make a whole new takana, a whole new enactment of 4 cups of wine? That's the question of the Mordechai. And you know what he says? He gives another answer. He says it's not these 4 expressions of Gula. If this was the intent, there would have been 4 matzahs. He says like this, no. Throughout all of Tanakh, there's 4 times it mentions Kois Yeshuos, the cup of salvation. And what does it say? Cup of salvation. Tonight is Yeshua. Tonight God saved us. So the Chachamim want us to remember that throughout the entire Tanakh, there's 4 times we speak about a cup of salvation, therefore they were misaken 4 cups of wine. That makes sense? Because those words, those psukim that they want us to remember, talk about a cup. So they made 4 cups of wine. But the Mordechai's kasha is, if it's these 4 expressions, you don't need a cup of wine. You want us to remember. So a kazayis of matzah is enough. He already told us to make 3 because of your cheshbonah. So now another cheshbon, 4 expressions, and what? And therefore there are 4 matzahs. So he gives a different answer. Now we're going to explain why what? Why the Chachamim, 2 things. Why the Chachamim enacted, why they wanted, first of all, these 4 expressions, why they're so important. Why they're so important. And why the only way to express it is 4 cups of wine. The first question is, why is it so important? There are many expressions in the Torah, in Parshas Moishe and Va'era, that describe God's redemption. Punkt this, v'tzeisi, v'tzalti, v'galti, v'lakachti. Why is this so important? Answer, my friends. What are we celebrating? You see it by the Seder night, essentially. Now we're going to answer also another question, another simple question. If it's so important, why didn't the Torah say to have 4 cups of wine? Why is this left to the Chachamim? And that's a general question. It's a general question which we'll get an answer to tonight a little bit, today or next week. If you, dear God, you want us to do it, so tell us. Shem sich nicht. Why are some things written in the Torah, some things the Chachamim, and then there's Minhagim? If that's what you want, come out, we're happy to do it. So we're going to get a very profound answer to why Torah works this way. Let's begin our journey. What are we celebrating Pesach in general, and particularly the Seder night? We are celebrating, in the words of the Navi Yecheskel, the birth, Leidas Am Yisrael, the birth of the Jewish people. Hence, our sages explain that the whole slavery, there's the birth pangs. The birth pangs. Birth is not an easy process, friends. We'll never know, but it's not easy. And that was the whole slavery, etc. Now, what does it mean, the birth of the Jewish people? So, as you all know, the Torah says, "V'chamushim olu b'nei Yisrael meret Mitzrayim." What does this word chamushim mean? Two meanings. Armed, they went out armed, which explains how they're able to fight with Amalek, because they lived in a rush whether they have instruments of war. They went out armed. Another meaning, chamushim, Rashi means echad nechamisha, 1 in 5. As you all know, 80% of the Jews refused to go, remained in Egypt, and died in the plague of darkness. Which is one of the reasons for Makis Choshech, because it was a big shame. They died and were buried during that time, that most Jews refused to go. For good reason. Life was good. Slavery ended already at Rosh Hashanah. There was no more slavery. 6 months earlier, the Egyptians were their best friends. Life was good. We were going to a desert to get what? Mitzvahs. How many was that? Thank you. And as for the ones that did go out of Mitzrayim, it was touch and go. In the words of Kabbalah and Chassidus, and you're all familiar, the Jews who did go were on the 49th level of Tumah. Alter Ben Tanya asks a gewaltige kasha. What was the reason for the great haste? The whole Pesach, the no chometz and the whole matzahs, all because they left, there was no time for the dough to rise. They couldn't have gone 2 hours later. We're going. The Egyptians, true, go, go, go. They could have said one word, all right, we're ready. 2 hours later, and the dough comes out of the oven, nice, delicious bread, whole wheat, sourdough, whatever the taste, and finished. And we'd have a very easy Pesach, friends. What was the big rush? So the Alter explains in Tanya, the big rush was because if they would have stayed a moment longer, this 20% would have said, no, we're not going. They would have sunken to the 50th level of tumah, of impurity, which the other 80% are already sunken to. And that's the point of no return. Why is the 50th level the point of no return? Let's explain where this comes from, which explains the 49 days of the counting of the Omer and the 50th day, which is Shavuos. So very briefly, as you all know, we have 7 emotions of the heart. That's why we wanted to fill in 7 times. Where do we get the 7 emotions of the heart from? Because we're made in the image of God. And the Eibishter has manifested 7 divine emotions, which we make reference to every day in davening. Chet l'cha Hashem ha'gdula v'ha'gvura v'ha'tiferes v'ha'netzich v'ha'hoid kichil b'shamayim v'ras l'cha Hashem ha'mamlocha. 7 emotions. Chesed, gevura, tiferes, netzach, hoid, yisoid, malchus. No. All 7 emotions are interwoven with each other. Chesed of chesed, gevura of chesed, and so on. Do the math. 7 times 7 is what? 49. Which means that the human emotional heart is made up of 7 basic emotions, but in detail 49, because they're all interwoven. Love and fear interwoven, for example. If you love something, you're afraid to lose it. Fear and love are interwoven. If you fear something, you love to be far away. So all the emotions, they all complement each other. They don't exist in isolation, they're all interwoven, which is why we're complex human beings. Not simple emotions. Each one has strands of the other. That's so 49. What's 50? 50 is the core I. That's the I. That's the essence of the person. So there's I love, I fear, but that's the I. So if the person, God forbid, is a 49th level of tumma, which means he corrupted all of his emotions, but the pintele, the I is still pure, there's hope for rehabilitation. There's some innocence left. But they sunk to the 50th level, that 80%. Which means the core I was unresponsive. They remained behind. The ones that didn't, the holding level 49. Had they stayed a moment longer, explained Al Rebbe in Tanya, in the spiritually corrupted and polluted and the seduction of Mitzrayim, they would have sunken to that level and refused to go. So when the time came that Eibishter promised, the 15th of Nisan, I'll take you out. When that morning came, out immediately, because they were running from themselves. Now, outside the polluted and corrupt environment, could begin the process of refinement, of cleansing, 49 days, leading to Matan Torah. That's the rush. Now, here's what happened by Yetzias Mitzrayim. This is, friends, is the essence of what we're celebrating. The essence of what we're celebrating is that no Jew post Yetzias Mitzrayim can ever fall to the 50th level. That can happen anymore. That's the great Chidush. The Maral of Prague explains that once God took us out of Mitzrayim, we can never, ever become slaves in essence, which means completely captured and corrupted ever again at the core of our being. 49 levels, yeah, maybe. Wrong loves, wrong fears, entangled in the wrong things, in wrong relationships, wrong desires, wrong fears. But the core essence, I am a Yid, that will always remain pure forever. That's the great celebration of Yetzias Mitzrayim. And that's why the Novi, Yechezkel, calls it our birth, because it's not something it's not our achievement, it's God's decision. You're not consulted to be born. Bal korchach atachai. One's born even against one's will, and some doesn't want to come down to the book. But on a deeper level, it means being Jewish is not your choice. You are, period. As we all know, that a ger also has no choice. It's who he or she is. It's going to come out sooner or later. Huh? That's the whole celebration. The eternity of what? Of a Yid that can never, that flame, that spark can never be doused ever again, as it was pre-Yetzias Mitzrayim. That's what we're celebrating. That's Minat Torah. That's what the Torah is saying. Matzah, and the matzah is the symbol of that. Matzah symbolizes exactly what we are celebrating at Yetzias Mitzrayim. Matzah is made quickly, running out of Egypt. We had to run because we would have sunken, but once we are out, we will never sink to that level again, because Hashem has granted us this divine spark and its eternity. Matzah is commanded in the Torah. Torah is God's communication to us. I have made you Jewish. And that's irreversible. That's matzah. God's gift. Along come the Chachamim, and they said like this. Yep, that's true. That's the essence of tonight. But kinderlach have to remember that being Jewish, I'm a Jew forever, is not enough. That's God's gift. We have to respond to that. We have to nurture and develop and express our Jewishness. And even as we're celebrating tonight, being Jewish, that cannot be separated from the responsibility of being Jewish, of our response back to Hashem. That has to be also part of tonight's celebration, and it's a Chachamim thing, not a Deiraisa thing, because Deiraisa Torah is God's bestowal. Chachamim is us, Bnei Yisrael, our response. So it's our response to say, thank you, Eibishter, and to celebrate it and to begin the process of expressing our Jewishness. Having said that, let's look at the four expressions. Now we see this so important. V'yitzesi, v'yitzalti, v'go'alti. I will take you out, I will save you, I'll redeem you. That's all God's doing. But there's a fourth expression, V'lakachti, Hashem said right away at the beginning, before Yetzias Mitzrayim, I will take you to me for a people. What's that? What's that referring to? That actually is not the Exodus. That's not Yetzias Mitzrayim. Take you from me as a people as Matan Torah. Is the giving of the Torah. In fact, V'lakachti is the same expression, marriage. Ki yikach ish isha. A man will take a woman. It's the same expression here, V'lakachti. Now, a marriage is two ways. You cannot force a marriage. It has to be where husband or wife, where he reaches out, will you marry me? Yeah. But it's a question. And she has to respond and accept the ring. Can't force her. Take the ring, we're married. So V'lakachti, which refers to Matan Torah, that's the marriage. That's when we, Klal Yisrael, Hashem's wife, are there willingly. So in simple language, Yetzias Mitzrayim is the birth, but Matan Torah is the marriage, the maturation, and now the response, a willing, desirable response, us choosing Hashem. So I'm rephrasing it now. Yetzias Mitzrayim is God choosing us, and Matan Torah is saying, we want you. And the Chachamim wanted that we should right away, it's hinted to in the Pasuk, it's hinted to, because God right away tells Moishe Rabbeinu, this is going to end up with V'lakachti, taking you a marriage. So the Chachamim, that's their role, is to highlight our responsive role. The Chachamim wanted, it's an important what? That tonight, by the Seder, we don't just celebrate God's choice of us, but this must begin the process of our response back. And that's why these four expressions are so critical. Because where is all of this going? It's going V'lakachti. Now, say already now, that's why they could not say, like the Mordechai was asking on the Rishalmi, so make 4 matzahs. The whole matzah model is not us. Matzah is tasteless and impoverished. It's tasteless. Because at that moment of Yetzias Mitzrayim, we were spiritually tasteless. What was our situation there? Okay, we'll go. That's it. Was there any desire? Was there any understanding? We were on the brink of falling into the 50th level of impurity. So what is the symbol of the Jew at the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim itself is matzah. It's the first 3 expressions, which is why the deeper reason for 3 matzahs. Yitzesi, Vitzalti, Vigalti. We'll go into next week greater detail why 3. Well, 1's enough. But you're seeing already now that matzah represents the state where we were at Yetzias Mitzrayim, which is God chose us, but we're not a willing participant. Like you were born. So the sages, the Chacham cannot say drink 4 cups of wine because, I'm sorry, 4 matzahs, because matzah does not convey what they're contributing to the Seder, which is our response. What does that have to be? Wine. The opposite of matzah. Wine has taste. Wine elicits feelings. The wine is the opposite of matzah. Matzah is made hastily and quickly. The quicker, the better the matzah. Wine, the longer it steeps, the longer it ferments, the better. The opposite. Because when you're responding, it's an ongoing process. Matzah is you're Jewish, that's it. Done, finished, born. But wine is an ever-deepening relationship, intoxicating relationship, but it comes from within. It takes time, needs to be developed. Wine, unlike matzah, has all of these tastes and levels and nuance. You read the back of the expensive wines. Some people actually can taste them. Blackberry, blueberry, chocolate, and hints of vanilla. Because each one responds. The wines are different. Each one responds according to their level and their stage of maturation. Matzah is uniform. Chick chuck, everybody equal. That's God's choice. So since the Chachamim wanted the Seder night, we want to focus on our response. Can't be matzah. That matzah is God's choice of us. Matzah represents our impoverished. It's lechem oini, impoverished state. We were whisked out of Mitzrayim. We didn't really leave. Just allowed ourselves to be taken. But wine, that's the symbol of our contribution. V'lakachti, hence wine under the chuppah, the marriage. Okay, that's level 1. Next week, God willing, deeper still into the 3 matzahs and the 4 cups of wine. We've already understood now, to a significant degree, why these 4 expressions are so critical and why the only way to represent them is wine, not matzah, because we want to bring out our contributing, responsive role in its ever-deepening process. We explain why this is the Deraisa and that's the Rabbanan. The Deraisa is God to us. The Rabbanan is man to God. So they're the ones that enact the wine. But God willing, we go deeper next week. Have a wonderful Shabbos, everybody.
Rabbi, good Shabbos.
Rabbi, thank you.
No, I'm up north.
Okay.
In the country. Beautiful. Shkoyach.
I'm going to stop the recording. Hang on.
Shabbos, Rabbi, thank you so much.